What if I told you he wasn't the greatest? That a country would fail to protect its greatest natural resource? That sometimes it is a matter of life and death? That no one can outrun the truth? What if I told you he's the only true Cubs fan? That you could heal all wounds with a fight song? That the man no one could stop tragically was? What if I told you running a marathon is easy? 30 stories, 30 filmmakers, 30 years. ESPN's critically acclaimed 30 for 30.
Today's episode: how have the changes in sports media over time represented the shifts in overall American culture and society? Due to the fact that sports media is a business, it purposefully adapts itself to society constantly to make itself as relatable and marketable to Americans as possible, making its changes over time a perfect reflection of American society's changes over time. We will now go through a number of decades in American history in which sports media was extremely relatable to the changes in American society.
Today we're going to analyze how sports media in the 1830s represented America in the 1830s. To do this, we first have to look at how sports media changed. So before the 1830s, sports were mainly covered in the newspaper. However, they took a back row seat to politics, which was the main reason why people read the newspaper. This shows how American society before the 1830s weren't too fond of sports and found it vulgar and disreputable. However, after the 1830s, sports all of a sudden became a key element of the magazine, which became very popular. So the magazine shows how sports became popular with Americans because the magazine itself became popular. So, what made Americans all of a sudden like sports so much? Well, a key element would be the Industrial Revolution. So you have your dog butt on the left representing America, and you have Europe on the right. And so what happened was you have the Industrial Revolution bringing about many immigrants to America. And so immigrants were obviously very immoral. So when you have a flood of immigrants coming to America, you all of a sudden go from having a very moral America to now having an American society with a big immigrant population, and therefore making American society immoral as a whole. So this is why sports became so popular, because all of a sudden American society as a whole became immoral, and of course sports, which were thought of as immoral, now were very attractive and relatable to an immoral society. An example of this is The Spirit of the Times, which was a magazine that started out for upper class people, but eventually started having boxing as well, which appealed to the lower class and the immigrants that made up the large majority of the population in America in the 1830s. So again, sports media and how it grew from taking a backseat to politics in the newspaper to becoming a prevalent factor in the magazine. This growth and expansion of sports and sports media shows how American society in the 1830s became very, very immoral because of the flood of immigrants coming as a result of the Industrial Revolution.
Hello, welcome. We will now look at sports media in the 1860s to the 1870s and how it reflects American society at that time. To have this analysis, we have historian John King. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
So can you please elaborate on this concept?
Oh yeah, sure. So in this time period, you had the Civil War, and so Americans, their family, friends, brothers, everyone they knew was pretty much in the war and was dying. So American society as a whole was very depressed and in the dumps. So what sports media did to kind of market themselves to these Americans was they portrayed their sports in a very inspirational way. So that way, the Americans that read sports media, they would enjoy reading it and they would be drawn to it because the inspiration that they got from the sports really was an escape for them from their everyday lives. So sports media, in essence, quote, extolled virtues of sport for American society.
So the way sports media portrayed sports in an inspirational manner shows how American society was expressed at the time because of the Civil War?
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. Yeah.
Well, thank you, and we hope you enjoy your time with our historian John King. So thank you for watching.
Yep.
Good morning. In the newspaper today, we'll be learning about an interesting topic in this article, the expansion of a newspaper into sports media. Essentially, the culture in America had started expanding with the rapid production of new technologies. With expanding technological advances, Americans started using technology more and more, unlike before. So these new technologies made things become more efficient and created an expanding economy. So as the economy is rising, it made printing costs cheaper, which in turn allowed for the newspaper business to boom. So the sports media shifted from using magazine as a medium for sports and into newspaper because of the price difference, and it was easier for people to access. So through the newspaper, sports media started becoming more and more prevalent. In 1883, Pulitzer created the first sports section for New York World, showing how the newspaper had extended enough in society to the point where sports media now had a new way to present their information. Well, that's it for your scoop on the newspaper. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to another historian interview. Now we'll look at the Great Depression and how it connects to sports radio. To have this analysis, we have historian Khan Tanabukun. Welcome, Khan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So can you please elaborate on this concept?
Okay, so during the Great Depression, Americans were in a terrible, terrible economic state. Therefore, they could not spend money on leisurely activities such as attending sports games. At the same time, the radio was starting to emerge as a prominent way for Americans to get their news. As a result of these two factors, Americans turned towards the radio to get their sports news, and the media adapted its sorts.
So the way in which sports media started using the radio a lot during this time shows how American society began to adapt to the harsh economic times and turns towards an option that was more affordable in the long term.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Wow, that's an amazing phenomenon. The radio business rising during harsh economic times.
Exactly.
Well, you heard from historian Khan Tanabukun. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you Khan Tanabukun as our guest.
Hi, fellas. I'm conducting an interview. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
You don't mind?
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
So,
Hi, I'm John. Khan.
hi, Colin. So can I ask you a question about who's your favorite sports athlete?
Yes, I like Ted Williams.
Ted Williams. Is there any particular reason why?
Yeah, he was involved in World War II, and I think he really personified that hero aspect. And translating that over to sports media, I found that really interesting. That really caught my attention. Made me more involved in sports media.
So the way sports media portrayed Ted Williams as a World War II hero really related to you?
Yes, I had a better connection with him, and he seemed more like a hero to me. Rather than just a sports hero, he was actually someone that signified the great moral values that soldiers had in World War II, and that translated over to sports.
So sports media's portrayal of athletes as World War II heroes really related to you and made you more interested in sports media. That's interesting. Hi, I'm John.
Oh, hello there, Daisuke.
Oh, hi, Dice. Okay.
Hello.
So is there anything, did you hear my question today?
No, you restate.
Is there any particular sports hero that you're really interested in?
Ted Williams.
Oh, Ted
You're
Williams.
good. He American. He want American be. I American like you. So I want to watch the baseball because I relate to him as American. He good values. I good values. Just like him.
Oh, okay. So same as your friend here, Khan, the way sports media portrayed Ted Williams and other sports athletes as World War II heroes really related to you. Oh, okay. So, aren't you too Japanese? And Hi.
Hi.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
My name's John. Josefa? Nice to meet you. I have one very pressing question. Is there any particular sports athlete that you're really interested in?
Sports athlete?
Yeah.
Number 42, Jackie Robinson.
Oh. Jackie Robinson, huh?
Yeah.
What team does he play for?
Brooklyn Dodgers.
Oh, Brooklyn Dodgers. Okay, all right. Is there any particular reason why you're interested in Jackie Robinson?
Well, Jackie, where to begin?
Right.
Just when Jackie started, there was such a conflict between both sides, the people that didn't want him to be a part of the game, the people that did want him to be a part of the game.
Right.
And I really feel like that conflict that was in American society at the time was really shown by Jackie's participation in baseball, and that conflict was really shown in the media as well, because they were trying to stir up things on both sides to show both sides of the story, and I really think that was an interesting part of Jackie Robinson's legacy.
So you're saying that sports media really made you extra interested in Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, they were stirring a lot of things up during that time, bringing a lot of things up that the public might not have seen without the media showing these different viewpoints in society.
All right, well, thank you, Josefa.
Oh, thank you, John. The Cold War played a huge role in American culture as Americans hated the Soviet Union and felt that they needed to beat them in every area, including the arms race and the space race. While winning was always important in sports, competition had never reached such a high level in which a big part of a country's reputation was their performance in sports or in the Olympics. As the article states, quote, athletics was an important tool in demonstrating the superiority of a country's way of life. For example, one of the greatest moments in American sports history is their underdog victory against the Soviet Union in 1980. It was such a big deal not only because of it being the miracle on ice, but also because we had defeated our arch rival, which shows how American sports were influenced by the intense competition of the time. Sports media echoed the sentiments of the American people, as shown by the History Channel article, which talks about how the miracle on ice was particularly charged because the US and Soviet Union were Cold War enemies.
Today we are going to now transition to the present, 2010s. In our current time period, sports media has changed and has gone into social media such as Twitter and Facebook. During ESPN Chosen Games, there are hashtags for people across the country to interact with each other about various sporting events. And sports has become a very large part of Facebook, oddly enough.
Sports media has come into the social media world as a classic adaptation of going along with what American society is doing. So during these recent times when American society has shifted to use social media immensely, sports media has shifted to these changes as well. The fact that sports media has adapted to society's changes and tendencies means that we can look at this change in sports media to tell us about our society. For this case, the focus on social media by sports media reflects how our society has catered itself for a desire for instant information. This is a generation at, in which we have grown accustomed to finding out information when we want to, and our use of social media reinforces this fact.
So the use of social media also shows our current society's want to interact with each other and be sociable. The fact that we want to be around friends 24/7 is reinforced by our current society's use of social media to be connected with others whenever they really want to.